Hey guys, tonight we glide softly across a mirror of moonlight, Lake Xochimilco, where the stars blink just as brightly in the water as they do in the sky. The canoe rocks gently beneath you. A cool mist clings to your arms as a chorus of frogs croaks somewhere in the reeds. All around, faint lights flicker among shadowy islands that float, not quite land, not quite raft. These are the famous chinampas, the floating gardens of the Aztec world. And yes, you are about to learn how to live on one. Fair warning, you probably wouldn't survive the first week. Between the fish gut fertilizer, the constant threat of tipping your canoe full of squash blossoms, and the unrelenting buzz of mosquitoes the size of lentils, let's just say you'd be yearning for the sweet luxury of 21st century plumbing.so. Before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're tuning in from somewhere interesting, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing where in the world you're nodding off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You reach out and touch the surface of the lake. It's smooth and surprisingly warm. Sunlit all day, now holding onto the last bits of heat. In the darkness, the silhouette of an island approaches, not anchored by rock or land, but floating, secured in place with woven willow stakes and a whole lot of clever engineering. You don't land on a dock. You glide gently into a patch of marshy soil, somehow solid enough to walk on, even though it's essentially a wet sponge of lake muck, rotting plants, and reeds. This is your new home, apparently. Don't worry, we'll decorate later. The Chinampa system, let's call it Aztec hydroponics meets lazy river, was a brilliant adaptation to the swampy basin where Mexico City now sits. The Mexica people, that's what the Aztecs called themselves, didn't just farm the land, they built it. Literally. These gardens weren't naturally occurring islands. They were crafted by hand, layered with mud from the lake bed, decaying vegetation, and even the odd fish scale or two. Kind of like making a lasagna, if your ingredients were silt and stubbornness. Historians still argue whether chinampas floated freely or were anchored more permanently to lake beds using wooden stakes. But what's certain is that they were highly productive. An acre of chinampa could grow crops year-round and yield several harvests per year, way more efficient than most European farmland at the time. And yet here you are, standing barefoot in mud, swatting away a mosquito while trying to remember if amaranth is a grain, a flower, or a politely declining Aztec god. Spoiler, it's mostly a grain, and a sacred one at that. The air smells like wet earth, wild mint, and wood smoke drifting from a distant cooking fire. Somewhere, a canoe drifts past, loaded with marigolds and nopales, those soft, spiny cactus paddles you're supposed to pretend taste amazing grilled. A mother hums gently to her baby, the tune carrying across the water like a breeze. And beneath all this peace, this gentle rhythm of lake life, there's complexity. Trade routes, rival clans, floating temples. Not to mention a calendar so precise, it could probably schedule your next dentist appointment. But for now, you lie back on a reed mat, watching stars dance above the dark silhouette of Tlaloc's volcanoes in the distance. You're surrounded by water, but it feels like the earth is holding you. Somewhere nearby, a frog croaks. Maybe it's trying to tell you something. Or maybe it's just as confused as you are about this whole floating garden situation. You wake up with your cheek pressed into a reed mat that smells faintly of river and foot sweat. A thin mist rolls over the lake, curling around your ankles as you stretch and blink sleep from your eyes. Time to build your own chinampa. Yes, really. No, there won't be instructions. Just mud, sticks, a suspiciously sharp obsidian shovel, and the enduring hope that you don't accidentally float away. Step 1. Gather up bundles of reeds, a huge saddle reeds if you're being fancy, then lash them together like a raft. This is your base layer, kind of like a mattress topper made of plants and pure optimism. You wedge these between willow stakes, hammered into the lake bed. If you're lucky, they'll hold fast. If not, well, hopefully you can swim. Now it's time to add the mud. Thick, black, oozy stuff dredged up from the bottom of the lake with a big, flat-bottom basket. Picture shoveling Nutella with a colander. It's exactly as clean and fun as it sounds. This gunk is full of nutrients, plus decomposed fish bits and the occasional eel. No need for store-bought compost when you've got lake stew. You layer it on top of your reed platform, followed by more plant matter. Rotting leaves, leftover tamale husks, maybe an old sandal or two for good luck. Historians still debate whether this layering method evolved from earlier Mesoamerican raised field agriculture, or whether the Mexica came up with it entirely independently. Either way, it worked like magic, and not just because it sounded like a muddy curse when you fell in. You squat and pat the surface flat. It's not solid exactly, but it feels like it could support life. So you plant corn, then beans, which will climb the corn stalks, then squash, which will snake along the base and shade the soil. You've just done companion planting, and no one even had to sell you an eco-lifestyle newsletter. The Aztecs were organic way before it was cool to dough. And don't forget to plant chia. Yes, that chia. You'll sprinkle it on your tamales later, long before modern influencers turned it into overpriced smoothie filler. The leaves also make a tasty herbal tea that might help you sleep. Assuming you're not too haunted by how sore your arms are from paddle hauling mud that a canoe paddles by. A child waves, holding a baby duck. You wave back. Try not to look like you just built your chinampa sideways, which, okay, you might have. Someone has painted a glyph on the side of their canoe. A toad with feathers, possibly a family crest, or just a really confused frog. Your fingers ache. The sun is higher now, glittering on the lake's surface like scattered beads. A heron stares at you judgmentally. But you did it. You built a chinampa. Sure, it's smaller than the others. Slightly crooked. Smells like fermented lake banana. But floats. Probably. That's more than most weekend DIY project can say. You sit back, toes buried in warm mud, and listen to the wind ripple across the water. There's no hammering, no phones buzzing, just the distant sound of someone rhythmically pounding maize into dough and a faint lullaby drifting from a hut across the channel. You wonder, did every chinampa owner go through this much effort? Historians think there were thousands of these floating plots, forming a kind of patchwork neighborhood on the water, and all of them, every last one, was handcrafted with care, mud, and presumably sore backs. Still, there's something satisfying about it. Your tiny, muddy masterpiece bobs gently beneath you. It may not be much, but it's yours. You wake up again, this time not to roosters, but to ducks, wild ones, flapping and honking across the lake like tiny winged alarm clocks. Somewhere nearby, someone is laughing in a canoe. A paddle dips and rises rhythmically, scattering silver droplets that catch the early sunlight. It's another day on your chinampa, and somehow you've survived the night without drifting off into the marshes or being kidnapped by axolotls. Life here starts early, not because people are morning types, but because the lake won't wait. You roll up your reed mat, splash your face with lake water, which may or may not contain a microscopic frog, and peer out across your neighbor's gardens. On one, a woman bends low, harvesting quilites, those wild leafy greens that taste like a cross between spinach and stubbornness. On another, a group of boys are attempting to raise turtles. The turtles are not cooperating. You stand, stretch, and begin your own morning routine, which, surprise, includes a paddle. That's right, you don't walk to your errands. You float. Your canoe is your everything. Shopping cart, delivery van, school bus, and occasional nap zone. You kneel inside and push off gently from the edge of your garden, gliding between the narrow canals that separate each chinampa like leafy streets. The air smells of damp earth and wood smoke, maybe a bit of boiled maize wafting over from someone's breakfast fire. You pass under a natural arch made of woven vines and willow, kind of like if the HOA here were run by basket weavers. Children wave from a bow of another canoe, one holding a clay figurine that looks suspiciously like a lopsided jaguar. You wave back with two fingers, trying to seem like you belong here. Historians still debate how socially stratified daily life on chinampas really was. Some scholars argue they were worked mostly by commoners, while elites lived in grander compounds on firmer ground. Others believe many families truly lived on or beside their plots, creating floating neighborhoods where social status mixed more freely than the mainland cities. You, being a newcomer, are definitely the awkward new neighbor who still forgets which direction the canoe is supposed to face. You paddle to a friend's garden. He's growing chili peppers and something that smells suspiciously like fermented fish paste. He greets you with a nod and hands you a steamed tamal wrapped in corn husk. It's warm, spicy, and filled with squash blossoms, the kind of breakfast that makes you both grateful and slightly nervous about what counts as stuffing. After breakfast, it's time to tend your own plot. The work is gentle, rhythmic, checking the corn for worms, pinching off the bean shoots, shooing away a goose that has developed a taste for your amaranth. A dragonfly lands on your shoulder. You feel useful, maybe even serene. Your neighbor calls over, "Don't forget to water the chili roots. They dry fast." You nod, trying to act like you hadn't already forgotten and nearly killed them yesterday. Throughout the morning, the canals are alive with quiet activity. Women weaving fishing nets, children practicing flute songs, one elderly man dozing upright in his canoe, holding a paddle like a teddy bear. The lake reflects it all, rippling gently under the sun. You pause to sip a warm cup of cacao, bitter and frothy, with a dash of chili because Aztecs didn't mess around with their hot chocolate. No marshmallows here, just fire and flavor. It's strong enough to wake the dead, or at the very least, make your eyes water in a dignified, historical manner. And as the sun climbs higher, glinting off the mirrored water, you realize that life here, on these floating islands, is both hard and oddly peaceful. You can feel the weight of tradition in every wooden paddle stroke, in every clay pot clinked against a boat's edge. Somewhere, a child begins to hum a tune, a simple melody, maybe a lullaby learned from grandmother. You hum along, quietly, and let the rhythm carry you through your watery neighborhood. By now, your fingers are stained with dirt, and your arms have adopted the gentle ache of someone who spent the morning wrangling chili roots and shooing away overconfident ducks. The sun climbs lazily toward its midday peak, and you decide it's time for a little horticultural inspiration. You paddle over to one of the elder gardener's chinampas. Her rows of plants are the stuff of legend, or at least neighborhood bragging rights. As you arrive, she nods without turning, already elbow deep in a patch of tluxikit, the vine we now call vanilla. It smells faintly sweet and dusty. You inhale deeply, and she mutters something about how you'd better not be stealing any more amaranth. Thank you very much. You make your best innocent face and sit cross-legged beside a row of marigolds. It's a masterpiece of companion planting. Corn stretches tall like centuries, wrapped in spiraling bean vines. Squash plants sprawl across the chinampa's edge, their wide leaves shielding the soil like umbrellas made of green butter. In between, vibrant pops of red chilies and yellow marigolds sway in the breeze. This isn't just gardening, it's theater. The Aztecs understood ecological balance centuries before the term existed. Companion planting wasn't a trend, it was survival. Marigolds deterred pests. Beans fixed nitrogen in the soil. Squash vines kept moisture in. Every plant had a role. Kind of like a botanical sitcom cast, but with more dirt and fewer laugh tracks. Historians still argue over how much of this system was scientific understanding versus inherited ritual knowledge. Did they know why the beans helped the corn grow, or just that it worked? Hard to say, but whether by observation or intuition, the method was brilliant. And the results? Delicious. You try a small bite of episode, a pungent herb that smells like a mix between oregano and menthol cough drops. Supposedly, it helps digestion, especially when eating beans. You make a mental note to sneak some into your next stew. You also mentally note that it tastes like someone dared a leaf to become weird. In the next row, you find chia again, its tiny buds shimmering in the sun. You marvel at how many of these plants, chia, tomatoes, amaranth, cacao, are now staples in modern diets, marketed as exotic superfoods. Back then, they were just food, humble, reliable, and occasionally sacred. The gardener chuckles as you absent-mindedly stroke a stalk of maize like it's a small pet. She tells you that each variety of corn has its own personality, some sweet, some starchy, some temperamental like her second cousin. She doesn't specify whether that's an insult to the corn or the cousin. You offer to help weed a patch of tomatoes. She hands you a stick and gestures to a nearby toad that's been squatting defiantly next to the roots. You're not sure if she's asking you to poke it or politely request that it relocate. Either way, the toad wins. It blinks slowly, as if to say, "This is my Chinampa now." The afternoon breeze cools your face as you continue weeding side by side. Occasionally, the elder hums a tune. No lyrics, just a melody that meanders like a lazy canoe. The sun filters through maize leaves above you, casting striped shadows across the soil. You realize this isn't just gardening. It's ceremony. The act of caring for these plants, of placing them beside one another with purpose and memory, is a form of storytelling. And here, surrounded by beans and jokes about her cousin's temper, you are part of that story, sweaty, confused, but welcome. And just as you start to feel like you're getting the hang of it, she hands you a clay cup filled with something green and slightly lumpy. "Drink," she says with a grin. You hesitate. "It's fermented cactus fruit," she adds. You sip. It's fizzy, weirdly good, possibly alcoholic, floating gardens, and strange smoothies. Who knew sustainable farming could be this strange and oddly relaxing? The sun dips westward now, casting a buttery glow over the lake. Your canoe drifts lazily past reeds and lily pads as you head toward the causeways, the long, straight paths that connect the floating Chinampa zones to the solid land of Tenochtitlan. You're not exactly going to the city. You're more just snooping near its edge, curious about how this watery suburb fits into the empire's rhythm. The causeways are engineering marvels, wide enough for foot traffic and the occasional noble's litter, flanked on both sides by shimmering canals. And they don't just sit there. No, they're smart. Portions include removable bridges. Pull them up, and bam, instant mode. It's like home security meets urban planning. Eat your heart out. Gated communities. As your canoe coasts closer, you spot others heading toward the main markets. Women balancing baskets on their heads, fishermen with their morning catch, and a young man carrying what looks suspiciously like a live iguana. Trade is the lifeblood of this world. If you grow it or catch it, someone will buy it. You pass beneath an arch of flowering vines as a canoe stacked with cacao beans glides by. Not chocolate bars. Mind you, these are the real deal, bitter, gritty, bean-shaped currency. That's right, the Aztecs used cacao as money. 10 beans might get you a tamale. 100 might get you a night with a good storyteller. 2 beans? Maybe a massage from someone who only kind of knows what they're doing. Historians still debate whether the use of cacao as currency extended equally across the classes or remained more common among merchants and elites. Either way, losing your chocolate stash wasn't just disappointing, it was literally going broke. At the edge of the causeway, you spot a gathering near a low altar. It's not a major ritual, no giant feathers or obsidian knives here, but a modest offering, bundles of maize, a clay cup of pulque, that frothy fermented agave drink that tastes like fizzy bread, and a scattering of marigold petals. The air smells like sage and lake salt. A woman murmurs a prayer to Chicamcotl, the goddess of sustenance, asking for another good planting season. You lower your head just a bit. Even newcomers can show respect. You move along quietly, watching how the Chinampa life blends with temple life, market life, and political life. It's seamless. No zoning laws, no suburbs, no wondering whether you're allowed to build a rooftop garden. Here, the floating gardens aren't just food systems. They're spiritual, political, and cultural structures too. And then you hear a sound that breaks the calm, a conch shell. Deep, echoing, unmistakable. Somewhere beyond the mist, a priest has just marked the next part of the day. Maybe for a minor ceremony. Maybe to signal the changing of a work shift. Or maybe, let's be honest, to wake up someone who's been napping a little too enthusiastically on their boat. You turn your canoe and head back toward your plot. On the way, you pass a merchant polishing obsidian blades and a girl selling tiny clay whistles shaped like birds. You buy one with 3 cacao beans and try it. It shrieks like a dying duck. You love it instantly. By the time you arrive home, the sky has shifted again, now streaked with violet and gold. You tie your canoe to a willow post and stretch your legs, bones cracking like dry tortillas. The air cools quickly on the water. You light a small fire, roast a couple of tamales wrapped in banana leaves, and wrap yourself in a poncho that smells faintly of wet dog and maize. Comforting in a historically accurate way. Somewhere in the distance, drums begin their soft, steady beat from the city center. You can't see them, but you feel them, the way you might feel thunder before storm. And it hits you, you're part of a vast, complex empire, one that floats gently, row by row, above the lake. Night falls slowly on the lake, like a great woven blanket pulled gently over the sky. The chirping of birds fades, replaced by the gentle plunk of frogs hopping into water, the croak of toads beneath reeds, and the distant hum of flutes. Somewhere, someone's already started the lullabies. You step out onto the soft earth of your chinampa, brushing aside a curious moth. Your fire still glows dimly, its warmth competing with the lake breeze. Nearby, your neighbor lights a clay lantern, oil-fed, the flame a steady flicker beneath a carved jaguar face. The shadows it casts on the water are all paws and teeth, but it feels more cozy than threatening. You light one of your own just to keep things even. Evening is when the gardens shift from work to wonder. Without the sun's glare, every leaf gleams. You swear the maze whispers when the wind moves through it, like the plants are catching up on gossip. The scent of crushed herbs still lingers in your hands. Mint, episode, a bit of wild garlic you accidentally yanked out thinking it was a weed. You'll pay for that later in your next stew. Dinner is simple. You unwrap your tamales from earlier, now crisped lightly on the fire's edge. You dip them in a sauce made from ground pumpkin seeds and chili, pipian, as the locals call it. Nutty, rich, and just spicy enough to remind you you're alive. A gourd of pulque passes between you and a nearby fisherman. It fizzes slightly on your tongue. He says it tastes better when the moon is full. You believe him, mostly because he has a tattoo of a moon on his neck and looks like he'd know. Somewhere across the canal, you hear a canoe glide by, its paddle rhythm a soft slosh. Two figures drift past, a woman singing softly and a child resting against her shoulder, half asleep. The melody is old, older than you can place. It lilts and dips, pulling your heartbeat along with it. You catch a few words, something about a rabbit on the moon and corn that grows in dreams. Aztec lullabies didn't always make sense, but that's part of the charm. Historians still debate the role of music in chinampa life. Was it mostly religious, or did secular songs, love ballads, work chants, nighttime lullabies flow through daily life just as deeply? Whatever the truth, it's clear that sound moves like water here. It travels, it soothes, it tells you where you are. You close your eyes for a moment, sitting on the chinampa's edge, feet dangling above a lily pad. The lake laps gently against the roots of your garden. Somewhere close, an axolotl breaks the surface with a blink and a tiny gulp. You smile. They're strange, slippery little things, perpetual juveniles. They never outgrow their gills. Biologists love them. Aztecs considered them sacred, linked to the god Xolotl. Also, sometimes they fried them. The line between divine and delicious was often fluid. Above you, the stars begin to emerge, poking through the velvet sky one by one. The constellations look different here. There's no Orion, no Big Dipper, just Sapakli, the great cosmic crocodile, and La Coche, the opossum who brought fire to humanity. You try to spot them. You fail, but it's okay. The real show is the sky itself, stretching wide and weightless above your floating world. A splash nearby startles you. A turtle? A very clumsy fish? Or maybe your neighbor finally dropped that gourd he was balancing on his head. You don't ask. Instead, you lie back on the cool ground, hands behind your head, the scent of wet soil and wild mint in your nose. This isn't a world of noise and conquest, not tonight. Not here. This is the Aztec Empire at rest. And you? You are exactly where you're supposed to be, between the earth and the sky, held up by a garden that floats. The moon is high now, round, bright, and slightly smug, like it knows something you don't. Your eyes adjust to the silver sheen that coats everything. The rows of corn shimmer like they've been dusted with powdered pearl, and the lake itself turns from inky black to a rippling mirror, catching moonlight with every breath of wind. You rise slowly, joints popping like uncooked popcorn kernels. It's time for a nighttime paddle, something almost sacred in Chinampa life. You slip your canoe into the water with barely a sound, careful not to wake the toad, now snoozing near your lantern. He has claimed that spot, and you do not argue with creatures who blink that slowly. As you begin gliding through the narrow canal, your paddle dips in with a rhythm that's almost hypnotic. Swish, pause. Swish, pause. The sound is half lullaby, half metronome. You're not heading anywhere in particular, just drifting like everyone else on the lake tonight. The air smells of crushed reeds and damp earth, with a hint of wood smoke curling from distant chimneys. Around you, other night canoers emerge like shadows. A man draped in a wool shawl passes by, humming low. A young couple sits cross-legged in their boat, sharing what looks like a roasted maize cob, laughing quietly every few strokes. You nod at them. They nod back. It's a silent club. The midnight paddlers to your left. You pass a small shrine, tucked into the crook of a willow tree. It's simple, a clay figurine of Tlaloc, the rain god, with a necklace of carved shells and a tiny saucer filled with water and marigold petals. Offerings like this, the canals, casual gestures of reverence. They're not grand temples, but little whispers to the divine. The kind of spirituality that doesn't ask much, just a nod, a paddle stroke in the right direction. Historians still argue whether these informal offerings were sanctioned or improvised. Were they tolerated by temple priests or quietly maintained by farmers who didn't wait for festivals to say thanks? Either way, they endure. Quiet and flickering like the stars, you pass under a low bridge. Its base is slick with moss and dangling vines, and emerge into a wider channel. Here, the lake opens up a bit, and the city glows faintly in the distance. Torches flicker along the causeways, casting golden halos in the mist. You can just make out the silhouette of a pyramid against the horizon. Even from afar, it's hard to ignore. A reminder that this floating garden life, gentle as it is, exists within the orbit of an empire built on tribute, ceremony, and sharp obsidian. But tonight, there are no tax collectors here. No shouting priests, just night sounds. The hoot of a sleepy bird, the splash of a jumping fish, the whisper of reeds brushing your canoe. Somewhere, faintly, someone plays a flute again, the same tune as earlier. You hum along. Badly, a light drizzle begins to fall. Soft as breath, barely more than mist. You tilt your head back, letting the cool droplets land on your cheeks. They feel like pinpricks of starlight. You pause your paddling and just float, letting the current nudge you. For a moment, time melts. You could be in 1425 or 2025. It makes no difference. The Chinampas are timeless. A dragonfly lands on the edge of your canoe. Its wings flash like stained glass. You whisper hello because why not? Everything here feels like it deserves a greeting. Eventually, you turn your canoe back toward home, slower now, reluctant. Your arms are heavy, not from work, but from peace. Like your muscles finally realize there's no hurry. No email, no errands, just canals, floating gardens, and a bedtime paddle under the stars. Back at your Chinampa, the lantern's flame still flickers, bravely defying the damp air. You secure your canoe with a practiced knot, tug twice to be sure. It's not like someone's going to steal it, but still. You've heard stories. One time, someone's canoe floated off in the night and turned up 2 weeks later as a planter in a noble's herb garden. You'd like to avoid that particular fate. You settle once more into the soft ground, wrapping your poncho tighter. It's past midnight now. The lake has gone quiet in that special way things do only after everyone's really asleep. Even the frogs seem to agree it's bedtime. But you're still awake, eyelids hovering somewhere between drowsy philosopher and content potato. This is when the mind wanders, and not always in straight lines. You find yourself thinking about how the Chinampas even came to be. Legend says the gods themselves once whispered to the farmers of Xochimilco, telling them to weave islands from reeds and mud. Realistically, it probably had more to do with innovation, overcrowding, and good old-fashioned stubbornness. But hey, divine gardening advice makes a better campfire story. You recall the ancient process, the men driving stakes into the lake bed, piling up layers of sediment, compost, and lake muck until a stable, fertile plot formed. Then came the willows, planted along the edges to anchor the whole thing in place. These are living scaffolds. Their roots intertwined with the soil, their trunks caught drifting silt, and their leaves provided just enough shade for new seedlings to thrive. It wasn't just clever, it was beautiful. You reach over and brush your hand across a nearby willow. It's damp and rough, with a few late-night beetles ambling across its bark like tiny security guards. You thank it quietly, because tonight's as good a night as any to start thanking trees. Historians still debate whether Chinampas began during the early Toltec period or if they evolved later, refined over generations by local communities. Either way, by the time the Aztecs came to power, these gardens were the empire's breadbasket and one of the most efficient farming systems the world had ever known. No tractors, no fertilizers, no monoculture nightmares, just floating rectangles of harmony. Lying there, you imagine yourself as part of that cycle. Maybe your breath is feeding the maize. Maybe the dragonfly you greeted earlier will lay eggs in the canal beside you. Maybe one day, your poncho will decompose into mulch that nourishes a pumpkin vine. You're part of the lake now. Whether you planned it or not, that gentle breeze stirs, and with it comes the scent of cooking. Someone, impossibly, is frying squash blossoms. At this hour, it's both comforting and slightly rude. Your stomach growls. You make a mental note to visit that neighbor tomorrow and bring a gift. A clay whistle, maybe, or a pouch of dried herbs. Barter works better than apologies. Across the canal, you hear rustling, then softly singing. Not a lullaby this time, but a work chant, oddly enough. An old woman, humming to her crops as she checks their leaves by moonlight. Some farmers just never clock out. You smile, eyes closing despite your best efforts. The willow branches above you sway gently, casting sleepy shadows across your chest. You hear the flapping of distant heron wings and the quiet bubbling of water beneath the roots. Even the insects seem to have taken the night off. You think for just a second about the world beyond the lake, the stone temples, the bustling markets, the warriors training with obsidian swords. But that world feels far away, like a noisy room behind a closed door. Here, in your floating patch of earth and water, it's just you, the moon, and a million glistening leaves. You're dreaming now, but not asleep. It's that velvety space between wakefulness and slumber, where the reeds blur into stars and your breath feels like mist. You hear the lake murmur beneath you, low and constant, like it's telling old stories you're only half meant to understand. Your body stays still, but your thoughts drift back, forward, sideways. You picture what this place might look like centuries from now. Would anyone still float through these same canals? Would anyone remember the song of the axolotls or the taste of lake-fed chilies? Probably not, but maybe. Historians still argue whether Chinampas can survive the modern world's creeping concrete. Some say they've already vanished. Others claim a few secret patches still flourish, tucked behind alleyways or hidden under tangled vines, stubborn as ever. You imagine a future tourist stumbling onto one. Maybe they step off a tour boat, chasing a wayward paper map, and find themselves in a forgotten canal, nose to nose with a willow tree and a suspiciously territorial goose. Maybe they'll take a photo and post it with a caption like, "Lost Garden World," but deep down, they'll know it's more than lost. It's still alive, just very quiet. You shift slightly, the ground beneath you springy and damp. It's always a little surreal, this feeling of sleeping on something both alive and floating. Like camping on the back of a whale that doesn't mind you being there. Somewhere in the reeds, a fish jumps. Or maybe something larger. You open one eye. Nope, just a particularly athletic frog. You offer a silent salute and roll over .t. Oh, keep your mind occupied. You start silently listing the things you've learned in this floating garden life. 1. Don't underestimate the power of shade. 2. There's no such thing as too much maize. 3. If a beetle lands on your food, it's probably just saying hello. You're not sure if these count as wisdom, but they're yours. You think about your neighbors. Not just the ones you see each day, the farmers with their carefully wrapped tortillas and colorful sashes, but the non-human ones. The dragonflies, the frogs, the herons, the snails, the swaying water lilies. The lake is more than scenery here. It's community. Every ripple is a knock on the door. Every bird call, a check-in. You remember a child once telling you that the Chinampas floated because they were homesick, that they moved ever so slightly, always nudging toward the memory of solid ground. You'd laughed at the time, but tonight you're not so sure. Maybe there's something to that idea. Maybe everything, even a garden. Once a homed out a light fog begins to roll across the surface of the water, curling around your ankles, soft and cool. It silences what little noise remains, wrapping the Chinampa in a bubble of hush. You feel like you're inside a dream within a dream, like even the frogs have pulled the blankets up to their chins. Somewhere, someone snores. Not you. Probably that fisherman with the moon tattoo. It's a weirdly comforting sound. Human, unfiltered, real. Even empires need snorers. Your eyes close fully now, for real this time. The stars have doubled, or maybe you're just seeing them twice. The moon is lower, its face dipping toward the horizon like it's about to whisper goodnight. And the lake. The lake rocks you gently, like it has for thousands of years, with rhythms older than memory, older than kings. Morning begins slowly, like a yawn that takes a full hour to finish. The sky turns from ink to from pearl to a faint apricot blush. You're not even sure when you open your eyes. They might have just drifted upward, following the light like water lilies. The first sounds come gently. A splash, a creaking paddle, a reed flute somewhere already trying out a new melody. Then a laugh, low and raspy, probably old Teoxahutl again, telling his ducks a joke they've heard every morning since maize was invented. You stretch, bones reluctant, and sit up. Your Chinampa has changed overnight, as it always does. The dew beads on the leaves like tiny glass marbles. A spider has constructed an elaborate web between two bean poles. Pure architecture, more complex than anything in Tenochtitlan. You nod in appreciation. The spider ignores you, probably waiting on a breakfast delivery. You stand, wobbling slightly on the spongy ground, and begin your usual morning circuit. You check the milpa first. The maize is tall and smug, tassels golden in the new light. The squash blossoms are already half awake, curling open like they've just remembered it's market day. The amaranth waves lazily in the breeze. You pinch a bit of damp soil between your fingers. Loamy, rich, perfect. The Chinampa has done her work again. No fertilizer, no irrigation system, just rhythm and patience. And maybe a little frog pee. Science is strange like that. Historians still debate whether the Chinampa system could have fed the entire empire on its own, or if it was supplemented heavily by tribute, grain, and mountain terrace farms. But down here at water level, you don't feel like debating. You feel like breakfast. You make your way to the edge of the platform where your comel, a flat clay griddle, sits on 3 rounded stones. You've kept embers going overnight, buried in ash like warm secrets. A few pokes, a sprinkle of kindling, and the fire wakes with a satisfied sigh. You place 2 tortillas on the griddle, and the scent rises immediately. Corn, smoke, a touch of yesterday that a neighbor glides by in his canoe and raises a steaming basket. Tamales, he offers. You trade him a handful of chiltepin peppers and a half-smiling promise to help with planting next week. He knows you won't show up. You both know. It's fine. You eat your tamales slowly, watching the lake wake up. More boats now, more voices. A few dogs barking across the water. One seems to be arguing with a goose, and the goose is definitely winning. Ducks trail each canoe like they've got official assignments. The sun crests the mountains now, spilling gold across everything. You close your eyes for a moment and breathe it all in. The warmth on your cheeks, the scent of warm earth, the rustle of willow branches and morning gossip drifting across the water. You think back to your midnight paddle, the way the water glowed, the silent greetings, The way time folded in on itself like a well-wrapped tortilla. It wasn't a dream, but it wasn't exactly waking life either. It was Chinampa time, floating time, soft, slow, sticky around the edges time. You let your fingers trail in the canal one last time before the chores call you back. The lake is cool again, like it always is in the early morning. Full of possibility, full of sleep. And though the city will rise soon with drums and trade and more pyramids than you really need, you linger just a little longer. You sit, you breathe, you let the sun pull you gently forward into the day. You've been floating for a while now, drifting through gardens that sway, breathing the same slow rhythm as the water beneath them. The lake is quieter again, just the whisper of reed stalks brushing against each other, just the distant hum of a paddle dipping in and out, again and again, like a heartbeat with no hurry. The sun climbs higher, but you don't feel rushed. Here, time moves differently, soft at the edges, like the way mist rolls off the water, or the way a song lingers in your memory long after the singer's gone home. You settle deeper into that thought. Maybe this place never really leaves you. Maybe it's the kind of memory that curls up at the edge of your dreams, like a lazy cat, content to just be near to. So let your breath slow. Let your shoulders fall. Let your thoughts scatter like petals on a canal. The water still rocks beneath you, and the Chinampa still holds.